the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The voice of spirit.
The voice of spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, a very warm welcome to you, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening or night. And we've got a very special guest on the show tonight, Ellen Red. And she's going to be talking a little bit about her life and her experiences. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask her or myself, then do get us in the chat room. I can say it isn't coronavirus. It's something I get regular. But there you go. Hi, Ellen. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very, very well. Interesting reading your bio about near-death experiences that you've had and some of the violence, unfortunately, and astral travel. There's an awful lot there, isn't there, from losing children and all kinds of extreme tragedies that have happened for you. We often say on the show that, mediums have hard times, and I know from childhood I had a few things happen. You seem to have had an awful lot. Do you feel that that's made you the person that you are?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There were good times in there too, but most certainly the tragedies do have a funny way of tattooing your soul, and so absolutely it shaped me.
Yeah. I mean, we do have good times, as you say, but quite often it's going through those experiences that give us appreciation of another person's view, and of course it's not so much what happens to us, it's how we react, isn't it? Because we could turn out completely different people.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you see that, I think, a lot with people where they get into drugs or become homeless or whatever else it is, that they're not able to cope with certain tragedies like that. And it's very easy to see why. It takes a lot of work to pull yourself out of those types of situations.
Yeah, it is a real test of the soul. What was your very first memory of being sensitive or being aware of spirit? I have memories literally of being in my mother's womb. So I don't know if that counts in terms of being sensitive to the spirit, but I know that as young as 3 and 4 years old, I was, walking in my neighborhood and realizing and recognizing that spirit was guiding me on my way home. So I think that I was always pretty in tune to it. But then when I was 4, I drowned, and that caused me to, go to heaven, the heaven dimensions or whatever. And that really made me sensitive to it. And I think it was just one of those things where for me, pretty much my whole life, it's all I've really known. It's the only place I could go get answers from, So absolutely. I mean, I really understand that. I often say this and people think I'm joking. But I often say that I get more sense from the dead than the living.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. At least we can get clear answers in that way.
Right.
Talk us about the physical feelings and the spiritual experience that you had of passing, because there are all kind of similar things that happen, but as far as I'm aware, they are extremely individual. So how did the drowning kind of start for you?
Well, I'm sure my audience is probably tired of hearing me talk about this because I talk about it all the time. But and I've had quite a lot of different death experiences. So and each one sort of revealed different things for me. But the first one being when I was 4, it was exactly what you hear a lot of people talking about, how see angels and you're embraced with love and you go into the tunnel and then you get to the other side and everybody's there just happy to see you, and it's the most blissful, divine feeling of ecstasy, really, that you could imagine. So that was my experience when I was 4. Although, of course, I had to fight under the water to try to get oxygen. So getting to that point wasn't exactly fun. I was pretty ticked off because I knew that I was only 4, and I was really upset that I was going home already. I was like, "What do you mean? I just got here?" So I was ticked off, and then I went through the tunnel, and then I got the peace, and I understood a lot of things. I think this is the hard part for people, is that you don't just see things, you really have this knowingness that impresses you in your soul. And so I had this knowingness, or this understanding of our design, our nature, our earthly existence, where we come from in the heavenly dimensions, and what life's really like that way, what our souls, are really all about in terms of loving one another and being peaceful and being, sensitive to one another's feelings and those types of things. All this stuff that humans don't really like to talk about.
Yeah.
So it's like it just gets impressed in your soul, doesn't it? And then it's just this knowingness, and there's really no way to deny yourself that after that, I don't think, unless you're really screwy.
Yeah, and I think, it's quite apt to talk about that at this moment, because, of course, we've got this virus that's encircling the world, and I think the government in the USA is a little bit like us. We're very slow off the mark. It's like, it's like that deer in the headlights thing, and the UK government goes, "Oh, something's happening. What are the others doing?" And we're just lagging behind, and it's it doesn't seem to make sense. I know that there comes a point, doesn't there? And I think the younger you are, the easier that point comes, because we're connected to spirit. But there comes that point of surrender, doesn't there?
Absolutely.
I remember. Yeah. Sorry, Helen, carry on.
Oh no, you're fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember when I was 7 or 8, I went to bed and I felt really, really ill, terribly ill, to the point where I couldn't even cry out. And I lay there thinking, what's going to happen, and why is this happening to me? How's it happened so quickly? And I just got to the point, because I was aware from 2, and I thought, it's okay. I'm just going to lie here and pass. And I just came to that conclusion and drifted off, and of course woke up in the morning. But I think it's something that lots and lots of people wonder about, especially in these kind of times, what's there. Do you think it brings their awareness around to spiritual things? Because I feel it can be quite a divider. You've either got a sense of spiritual things, or it's just like, that's it, that's the end.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I do believe that it brings people to spiritual awareness, and I think that that's the most positive thing that can come out of something like this, is to get people's attention and cause them to have start looking, asking questions, and remembering who they are on a soul level, because people are afraid of death, and they don't understand. And so I think that these types of scenarios cause a lot of fear, which is unfortunate. Yeah. But at the same token, it also causes them to do the self-reflecting and asking questions and seeking answers. So it can be a very positive thing.
Yeah, I really feel it can, and sort of reflecting on our lives and that, because quite often when we get to a point where we are going to pass, it's often too late. I was looking up, doing some research on deathbed confessions some years ago, and contrary to popular belief, there's very, very few of them. People don't suddenly think, oh, there might be a God, I'll hedge my bets. They don't seem to, they've got to that point, and to them, in a sense, it doesn't matter. They can't change their life. So I think what's happening now and in these times does give us time to reflect.
Yeah, it does. And I'd just like to add for the viewers anyway that, for those that are thinking like that, where they think that it's too late and they don't have any recourse or whatever, sometimes literally just making one request to the divine, one prayer, one question, really, or even surrendering yourself to the divine can be all that is really required in your earth life before you do transition. So it can mean the world of difference, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And again, if it makes people think, this could be it, and then it's not, I do think that it does give that time for reflection, because it's when you get to that point that you do look very hard at your life and what you wanted to achieve and what you haven't, and you look at life in different ways. I know people that have been seriously ill and recovered. I've had at least one heart attack myself.
Oh gosh.
And for you and me, it's like, okay, you got to go at some point. But the thing that I found quite interesting was the advice of the doctors at that time. You can't do this now. You can't do this. Your whole life's changed. And for me, it was like, well, yeah, incidents have happened, but life for me is exactly the same.
Right.
My view's still the same, but it does change people. And I know that there's a physical kind of kickback with people that have had heart attacks. It can change their personality. They can get very angry, and couples talk about the other, or being a completely different person. So that's that in a negative sense. But I think if you have time to reflect, it's a good thing. I'm a great fan of Jimi Hendrix, and I brought this particular song up lots of times. But there's a song called Belly Button Window, where the baby realizes that it's not wanted, and what the parents, or particularly the mother, what are they going to do? But there was a study many years ago, I think in the 70s, and they realized that the baby can actually hear sounds, can react, so those that are in the womb but surrounded by music and those kinds of things, they remember that and become usually quite musical. So did you find when those memories from the womb, do you feel that they impacted with you in that way?
Absolutely. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I did, as I was healing throughout the years, start having memory of being in the womb, including just being comforted by the surroundings there, and feeling safe, and seeing kind of like this light coming through and all that. But that also led me later on to do deeper work on womb healing, and understanding some of the imprints on my own soul that I picked up on in my mother's womb, and also later on I started to do deeper healing and realize some of those imprints that my mother picked up from her mother, and how that was affecting my energy and my spirit and my life, really. So I think it's profound for people to really get to levels of healing in that regard, and start looking into that, because we do pick up on those things. We can feel our mother's pain when we're sharing their womb and things like that. So it's super important.
Yeah, I think so. And I know that you've been working on a spiritual level with lots of different people. So have you helped people that have had trauma with babies that have survived, but whilst in the womb.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, my mother was one of those. My grandmother tried to abort her, and she survived. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so yes, I have helped people, my clients as well later on, or people that have come to me for looking for, healing and assistance in that regard. But I do have experience, and originally on it came from my own family and my own experiences in healing that. And there is what we call soul babies too, where babies, whether they've been aborted or miscarried or whatnot, can still attach themselves to the auric field of the mother. And that can cause a lot of distortions and dysfunction in the mother's being as well, unless they're healed properly. So there's a lot to be said about that, both from the soul picking up imprints from their mother, but also the mother's making choices in their life and not understanding the spiritual side effect or remnants that they're going to have from those choices.
Yeah, I was looking at a very interesting article some years ago, and there's a phenomenon with people that have had organs donated, so they're transplanted into them, and there's a phenomenon where they can, I suppose it depends on how many organs or how large the organ, but there is an effect where they begin to take on part of the personality of the donor, or they get flashbacks and that kind of
memories.
thing.
Yeah. And I think that that's connected to cellular memory, and every single cell has memory in it. So when you transfer tissue even or anything that has cells in it, it holds its own memory. And I'm not a scientist, but this is my understanding of it, and what I understand from a spiritual perspective, that it's got memory. And so you're taking on, and this is where quantum physics comes in, where you're taking on a part of the other soul, and you're sharing souls with them, which the same thing can happen when you merge your sexuality with another being. You're merging sexuality and you're picking up soul imprints of that other soul. And so that can be good and bad also, because if you're taking on a lot of different partners, it can cause a soul to become fragmented and distorted, because it's got so many different imprints, it doesn't know who it is anymore.
Yeah, I read something years ago which kind of made a lot of sense to me, and they were saying that everyone that you meet has a past life connection with you, but especially partners that you've been physical with, there is a past life connection. And to me, when I read that seemed to me to be perfectly acceptable, because again, we don't meet people by accident. There's always a plan that's there, and it's very interesting. I know sometimes with reincarnation or incarnation, as Spirit put it, people say, well, why don't we remember other memories? Why don't we remember other lives? And we wouldn't in any detail, because we are crossing paths with people again that sometimes would be unhealthy. So you may walk past someone that you had murdered in another life, or you'd been murdered. So, that hard drive has to be wiped clean. But I don't think we'd cope if we could see lots of lives, it'd be very surreal.
Right. We'd be carrying around so much baggage, it'd be hard to function. But no, I agree. And where you mentioned having past lives with partners that you were physical with in a romantic relationship, in the twin flame community, that's what we call the karmic partners. Karmic meaning that we had some past life or some past energy that wasn't healed or wasn't handled properly, or we harmed them, so then we have to be harmed, or whatever it is, until all of that karma is kind of balanced out. And so they call them karmic partners. And then after you've balanced it out, you can come together with your a new clean slate with true love.
Yeah.
With your alchemical partner.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. I know with my ex-wife, I had at least 3 that I remember, but I think 4 past lives with her, and we were married in each. And so there was obviously something there going on. There was a recurrence,
Right.
but yeah, I find that kind of thing interesting. What do you find, and we'll carry on after the break because we're coming to a break shortly, but what do you find most interesting? Because we cover a lot of subjects and that kind of thing, don't we? And I find it comes in waves. So there's a particular thing that sort of really connects with you at one point, and then something else rises. What do you find most interesting about what you do at this moment in time?
Most interesting? Oh gosh, I love all of it. So I couldn't just pick one thing. I love knowing that I'm an immortal soul, and I love knowing that death isn't real, so I don't have to walk around living in fear. And I love knowing that in knowing my truth of who I am as a soul, that I'm empowered. So I think that the best thing that comes out of all of that suffering that you and I went through and others like us, that at the end of the day, having this spiritual knowledge, it makes you almost invincible, doesn't it? Because even death it's not even real. So, you don't have to hide in the closets anymore and live in a terrorized state of being, and you become empowered so that you can actually live a good life. Even in the midst of everything that's going on right now, I'm sitting here doing the same thing that I always do, enjoying nature, hanging out with my pets, hanging out with my friends, having great conversations with people like you, having a nice cup of coffee, which I'm trying to break myself of, but I'm sitting here doing all of the same things. It's not affecting me because it's not real in a higher sense. It's real in the physical world, but in a higher sense, we're just moving through energy. It's an energy purge. So when you look at it from the higher dimensions, you're not seeing it from the perspective of a human that's in a terrorized state of being or anything else. You're seeing it from the higher dimension to where you're seeing it from a cosmic view, which means that the earth itself is just going through some sifting and sorting and changing, and some things aren't working, so we're kind of purging out what's not working and we're rebuilding. It's a very
Absolutely. It's we were talking during the break, weren't we, about some spirit intervention, surgical intervention that you had, and that was really interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, and what led up to it, how it had affected you, and the result?
I astral surgery or remote surgery, which I know that as healers, when we do, Reiki and such, we do remote healing, but this was way beyond that. And basically what happened was, I was deep into my spiritual path and my ascension path. So I was on a daily basis doing meditations and just, working on myself, self-love, staying connected to my intuition and all that. And eventually I got brought to a place in time where I was asked to quit smoking. I had been a smoker since I was 12 years old, and I had already gone through, all of the healing work of just understanding why I started to do that, and how it was connected to my mother, and how it was, repressed emotions and all that stuff. So I did the energetic healing, the emotional healing, and the psychological healing, but I didn't do the physical part of quitting yet. And the spirits came and said, "You're going to quit." and so I had what I understood were, light beings come to me, 2 of them, very large, maybe like 12 or 16 feet tall beings, maybe even larger. And they came and showed me, and they were very all loving beings. And they came and showed me that I needed to quit smoking. And they showed me some darkness on the left side of my lung and breast. And I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that it wasn't good. And so, I had a deep awareness that, okay, if the spirit asks you to do something, you do it, darn it, or you're going to suffer. So do it. And so I went through the journey of quitting smoking, which was horrendous for me because I was so deeply addicted to it. They were trying to lift me out of my body and get my light body out of my physical body. And they were showing me that I couldn't all the way get lifted out again because I was getting hooked from, this wound and from the energy of smoking and all that. It was hooking me. And so, and I've come out of my body many times, but this time they were showing me that I couldn't get out. And so, I quit smoking and I went through all of that horrendous, awful pain and withdrawal and addiction and everything else. But what happened is right after I quit, I flatlined 4 times. And it was the weirdest thing because I know that I had an extraordinarily difficult time with it. Maybe not everybody's going to go through so much suffering. For some reason, I get all the really heavy duty lessons, and and I get really deep, hardcore lessons, and I get really awesome, out of this world lessons. So I don't know, but anyway. I flatlined 4 times. I was fighting really hard to be able to breathe. I couldn't get air. And it was from that mass of black stuff that was in the left side of my lung. And I was just fighting every day. I dropped everything I was doing. And I was, just pulling light in and trying and fighting to get air in there. And then by the end of the night, I was so tired from just trying to breathe that I would just hit the bottom and stop breathing and, be done. And I went to the hospital a few different times. Of course, I am already in a state of being where I already understood that the spirit can heal everything. And, as we stay in tune with the spirit and then we stay aligned with source, that really miracles can happen. And I was in that awareness already. So I was kind of trying to stay there, but I still allowed myself to do the whole physical, go to the doctors, talk to the white coats, let them give me, x-rays and all that. And every time I did do it, they treated me like I was crazy. They gave me x-rays. They didn't see anything in there. I was asking them, can you check and see if there's dark stuff over here? Yeah. I didn't know what that meant, So I was trying to get them to look in there and see what was going on. And they were treating me like I was a complete basket case. And they really didn't even help me to understand the physical part of quitting and going through withdrawals and what happens to the body and how the body, functions while it's smoking versus what happens when it stops and all that. So I was really in the dark and I was just going through the motions of it. They did a bunch of x-rays and they didn't see anything. But during this time, I was getting really every day, I could feel light beings opening my back, like cutting open my skin and reaching in from the back of me. And I could feel them in the front, like going through where the, this black stuff was. And I could feel, them surrounding me in my sleep and doing sending me healing energy. So they were circling around me. Like you see those turkeys in that video, they were walking in circles and they were healing me and I could feel it, but I could feel them reaching into my body and moving stuff around inside of me with, non-physical beings.
It's a peculiar feeling, that, isn't it? Because you don't feel pain, but you can feel, because normally we can't feel our organs, we have said you've got pain inside, but you can't feel them as such. And it's very odd to suddenly become aware and it kind of moving or being, depressed or whatever. It is a weird feeling.
Yeah. Well, I've gone through a lot of weird stuff, so I was used to weird, so I didn't mind much, but I was grateful for the help.
Yeah.
But eventually what happened was I ended up purging out a large mass, and then once that came out, I was able to breathe again, and it's taken a few years now to rebuild that lung, so they're still guiding me, but during that time it saved my life. The doctors didn't know what was going on. They didn't see anything. They didn't even know, what I was talking about. So they couldn't help me. It would have took who knows how many more months or years to, and I wouldn't have made it. I was flatlining and I was coughing out black stuff and it was just awful. But they definitely saved my life.
Yeah, I know that certainly mediums of various descriptions, um, they can intervene and keep life going at times when that's needed, and if it's permissible. So sometimes, of course, we have to go through the experiences that we do of pain and things coming to an end in a physical sense. But quite often, if we're useful, they do extend life, and I find that
Yes.
interesting that they have permission to do that, because in a sense they're not interfering. I feel that we give our permission as well,
Yes.
because we want to be of service. So yeah, I find that whole thing very, very interesting.
Yeah.
You were talking during the break as well about some books that you've want to complete. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, I have a couple of different books right now that I'm working on, and hopefully by the end of the year I'll have one of them ready. Maybe sooner. It depends. But one of them is about the alchemical journey, the twin flame, and connecting with that aspect of yourself and merging, on the alchemical level. And the other one is about near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. So I think my calling obviously is in those two areas. And so my work now is to try to assist others in ascension, as well as the alchemical journey or the alchemical merge, which is part of ascension.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have that subject brought up, because some of the books that have been written that deal with that are quite old. Certainly, when you look back at the older spiritual books, from the 1900s and before the 1900s, they tackled spiritism and spiritualism in a particular way and fashion that would be understood.
Right.
And I think that as well, because of this massive change the world is going through, understanding that perhaps, because they're talking about coronavirus perhaps being manufactured and this and that, I think it's actually useful if we bear that in mind, because it's a little bit like a chemical spill, isn't it? You say,
Yeah.
you say that these chemicals are a bit dangerous, and then they spill, and everyone gets a whiff and think, "Oh my God!" So I think it's interesting from that point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you talk about having battled depression as well, and I think that's something that as mediums we go through, certainly from time to time, because I don't think people realise that being that sensitive, things affect us an awful lot more, don't they?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can leave the house and talk to one person and have it be negative in some way, and it already kind of soaks your spirit a little bit. So it takes a lot of work to keep your own spirit clear of that kind of energy. But yes, it absolutely does, and I think that depression is really you know. I don't know one human being really that isn't depressed in some way, or that hasn't
Oh,
gone through it unless they're fibbing. But I think that
yeah.
some of it really is just being disconnected from your own soul and from your own soul truth, because you get in the earthly world and you do the things the earthly humans do, and it's not the same as what your soul came from. So you kind of have this discord, and until you can work out all those wrinkles, it plagued me for most of my life, really.
Yeah, I think it's something that once we understand it, we have to be completely on guard about it. There was a quote from David Bowie, and he was touring America at the time, and he was out in the middle of the desert somewhere. It may have been Las Vegas, and he talks about this wax museum, and he says, you've got a wax museum out here in the middle of the desert, you'd think it'd melt. So it was a bit of a flippant kind of remark, but then he was talking about a fly that had landed in his milk, and he said, musicians, because he was very sensitive, his autobiographer has admitted he was psychic. I knew that from the moment I heard his music. But he said, it's like being a fly in this milk. You're surrounded by this, energy earth, and you can't help but drink it in. And when we connect to people on different levels, and sometimes we just don't want to connect to them on that level, we can't help but drink that in. Do you think that's a social problem? Because the world, we're getting a lot more road rage incidents, people reacting in strange ways. I believe that it's because they are probably sensitive without knowing it, and they're just picking up the anger from other people.
I think that's a huge 100% that you're right about that. And it's a quantum physics thing. We're all connected. And so, even as we work with clients that we're working on healing this energy, we're susceptible to it. We really can't get away from it. But unless you go off into nature for a little while and take a little break, but
it's not always easy to do, is it? But I can really understand that. You talk, do you want to discuss your books a little more, or would you like to sort of talk about other things? Because I know that you read the Akashic records and that, and perhaps you'd like to explain to people how that came about, and for those that don't know, what they are.
Well, yeah, I guess how it came about for me was mainly through having a full Kundalini activation or Kundalini awakening, which was about 10 years ago. Maybe a little longer. I had an episode, sorry, had a little frog in my throat. I had an episode where I had my third eye open around 2008, but it wasn't the full Kundalini awakening. And then a few years later, I had the full Kundalini activation. So when that happened, that's when I accessed Akashic records. Although now that I know what Akashic records are, I realized that I was accessing them earlier on in smaller pieces as I was evolving and just being psychic and that type of a thing. So I was already kind of tapping into them. But that full-blown awakening was like having your head opened up and having the divine source of all infinite intelligence just pour wisdom into your brain and download it into like a big motherboard, So that's the best way that I can describe it. And I mean, it's so much information. I think it would be impossible for any of us to really take it all in and hold it and have this giant brain walking around. We would blow up if we were walking around with that much knowledge, but it's like so much just came in and I was able to see it and receive it. And now I know where to go if I need answers, if you will, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, sometimes I know in connection with spirit, there's the right time when you access knowledge. And the way that I usually describe it is you can read a book 100 times and then you read it again and it appears to be a completely different book. Suddenly the knowledge is there. The hidden things between the lines are open. And there is a spiritual law which says that you can only access that information when you're ready. However ready our ego tells us we are. There's still a point when it kicks in, and then the light comes on, and I find that fascinating.
Well, and what's really funny is when your ego is telling you that you can access it, your ego is going to make you think that you already accessed it, even when you didn't. So that's a funny little sneaky thing about our egos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm constantly fascinated because I learn something, every day. And mostly what I learn is I don't really know anything, because when you put it in context, it's such a small little nugget, compared to the rest of it. And for me, it's really humbling. But that's happened to me, reading particular books from years ago. And, you read it and think, that's really interesting. Oh, I've learned this and I've learned that. And you go back years later and you realise it's almost a different book. And suddenly you just get it. Yeah.
And that's how we evolve, really, is we do come back to our our wounds and our lessons and our lives, round and round and round, until we really get deeper and deeper layers of understanding of it. But yeah, it is different though when you do access the Akashic records, because it is life altering, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of my favourite films is A Matter of Life and Death with David Niven. I don't know if you've seen it. It's part black and white and part colour. It's fascinating. It's during the Second World War, and he's a British pilot that gets shot down, and his spirit guide is supposed to come and collect him and take him to heaven, but he's French. He misses him in the fog. And so there's then a whole sort of convoluted story about he's coming to collect him, and David Niven saying, well, you can't because things have changed. And he says, how have they changed? He said, well, because I didn't pass over, I met a woman that I've fallen in love with. And there's lots of little scenes, but there's the imagery, I think, is brilliant. And there's a point where there's a collection centre, and his mate, who knows he must have died because the plane completely gone. And he's talking to this lady saying she must be here, he must be here. And you get an image of a huge, almost into infinity, filing system, and people looking through records and that. And I always think of the Akashic records in that sense, because for me it's easy to visualize. But they carry everything, don't they, from every single life that we've had and will have.
Every thought, every single thought in the whole cosmos is there in that record, and there's no way to undo it. Every act, every deed, every experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people don't understand that when they pass over, that we reflect on our past life, but it isn't just odd thoughts of, I went here on holiday, that was really nice.
Right.
It's the emotions, isn't it? You're immersed in the whole thing.
Right. And it's also a record of your deeds, of whether you were living in accordance to spiritual law, isn't it? Because that's what quote unquote Judgment Day is about, is really having the balance of having all of your deeds recorded and keeping yourself and your karma balanced. Right?
Yeah, and hopefully we do it. Although I do feel I failed dismally. I
think we all feel like we're failing.
You think you're doing all right, and then you get a really sharp reminder, and you think, "Oh my God, screwed it again."
I agree. The moment you think you're doing good, huh? Which is why you got to keep it balanced, But
absolutely. Have you got I know workshops and things like that, because of coronavirus, certainly short term. Have you got any interviews, radio shows and things that you have got upcoming?
I have a couple of other radio shows that will be upcoming. I run a few groups online also on Facebook. Akashic Recall is one of them, and Twin Flame Initiates is another one. And basically, sometimes I will hold workshops, and I'll let people know in those groups and on my pages. But I also offer Ascension guidance to people through there, and I also do get out and do interviews with quite a few I try to get involved in the different spiritual communities as much as possible. So I have a couple different radio shows that I've been on and that I'll be on here in the near future. And maybe one of these days soon I'll have a little podcast or something, but mostly I'm trying to get through these books first.
Yeah, and they, people think they just sort of, you get down and scribble and they pop out and they're successful and everything. Yeah, I don't think they realise it. They always talk about your first book is your baby. I think they all are. I think they all are. So where can people get in contact with you on Facebook? Do they just put in Ellen Red?
They can type in Ellen Red. I have a main profile page, and I have another guidance counseling page that they can go to. And then they can also find me on Twin Flame Initiates. But basically, Ellen Red is the best way to find me.
Okay.
I have a YouTube channel. It's called Ellen Red. I'm the only Ellen Red out there, I think. Well, actually, that's not true. I noticed on Facebook they keep popping up with a whole bunch of them. It's weird.
Yeah. But it's spelled Ellen with an E, isn't it? Not a H. So it's E-double-L-E-N, and Red is R-E-double-D. So
R-E-D-D.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to look Ellen up, then be our guest, and we'll speak to you very soon. We'll be shortly back after the break.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The Voice of Spirit.
The Voice of Spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, very, very warm welcome back. As many of you know, I've written a book on Leslie Flint, the direct voice medium, and if you want to pre-order, you certainly can, and go to my website. So it's www.leo-bonomo.com, and if you go to the blog page, you'll find a link there. It was provisionally coming out in May, but it's now been postponed to July because of the virus and all those kinds of associations. Got a lovely lady with me tonight, Ellen Red, and you can get in touch with her on Facebook and various places. And she has a couple of books she wants to complete and for those to come out. And very interesting lady. And welcome back, Ellen.
Thank you.
I noticed in your bio that you had some connection with demonic attachments and past life recall. Tell us a little bit about those.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know where to begin. That was kind of going in two different directions. So I'll start with the first one. I'll start with the first one partially because, when I work with people and do energy work, you kind of have to go through this stuff first, I think, before you get into deeper levels of remembrance of past lives, at least in my experience, clearing out,
current karma and energy blocks and those types of things, so that you can tap into deeper, cellular memory. But anyway, where do I begin? Ask me a question.
Experiences. I can't talk now. Experiences that you've had with demonic attachments and some of those things on the dark side.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, this is a subject not everybody likes to talk about, and people are afraid that if you talk about it, you're going to lose your law of attraction or whatever it is. But it's a reality, and as you and I both know, there's a balance between light and dark in the universe. And I think that when we're not in awareness of our own power and our own capacity to choose on a moment by moment basis, even the thoughts that we're going to entertain, then we can become susceptible to darker energies, because they do like to feed on, and what I call loose farming, they love to feed on the soul. And if they can find any crack in your auric field, then they will infiltrate it, and they do. And some of the experiences that I've had in my journey, and this goes back to the discussion that we had with depression. And as I was moving through that depression and working through all of my soul work and kind of going through searching on how to save myself and how to feel good again, I really had to realize that a lot of what was going on was that I was taking on, one, I was not forgiving people that needed to be forgiven. And I was, I wasn't moving through the emotions according to spiritual law, for one thing. And then secondly, because of that, I was allowing negative attachments and negative energies to consume me, really. And they will. And they don't have any regard for you, the soul. They're just feeding on your energy. So I've had a lot of different experiences, from sex slave demons, which I ended up having to have an exorcism. Actually, I'm going to say that I had 2 of them, because I had one and then I still didn't quite understand the lesson, and I went through some more stuff in my journey, and then I had another one, and I'll never forget the lesson now. So
sometimes it has to be underlined, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, unfortunately, the matrix system has so many different layers of false templates and everything that it's really, really takes a lot of work for a soul to be able to move through all of those layers of false programming. Yeah. But the sex slave energy and demonic entities love to feed on the souls that are being promiscuous, or again, we were talking before about merging sexual energy and how that puts a soul imprint of the other souls on you. And then when you're taking that in, you're also taking on any of their demons or any of their negative energies or anything like that. And it compounds you on a soul level to where you end up getting so buried from it that you can't see straight. So, and that's kind of how they feed on your energy. And they being, the non-physical attachments or demonic energies that don't have a physical body. And they don't have a physical body, and they're also not ascended into higher dimensions. And so the only way that they can feel the feeling of having sex or, smoking cigarettes or doing whatever it is that they want to do that's not really healthy for your soul, but they want to do it still, and they don't get a body, so they can attach themselves to your energy field and siphon your energy and even telepathically get you to think that it's your thought that you're thinking, and have you make choices that are going to cause you to do deeds that they can attach to and feel the energy of.
It's a very subtle thing, isn't it? Because that's the problem that I've found out in having some interaction with the dark, is that you do think they're your thoughts. And they use that. And it's only when you get to a point where you realize there's a problem. I found sometimes they've been connected 10 or 15 years. And it's when they feel that they have full control that they kind of let you know. So by the time you think there's a problem, it's probably deeper than you think. There's a lovely gentleman that I've interviewed and been on his show quite a few times as well, David Clark, and he's sensitive as well. But he talks about because he had a problem with alcoholism and sex as well. You know. And he had all these problems to work through. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because they naturally attack the weakest points, don't they? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
they go for it, and really I think that there's a lot to be said about why so many children get molested and things like that. It's almost like this dark agenda in a sense, because as soon as that happens to a soul when they're so young, they don't know how to process that energy. They become susceptible. Their aura gets cracked, their spirit gets a little cracked, and it's easy then to infiltrate and cause the fragmentation process, so that they're easy targets.
Yeah, I suppose that seed is planted, isn't it? And then, you know, because it's like manifestation, you know, we manifest what we think about most, and quite often it's worries about, you know, coronavirus, not paying the bills, haven't got this, haven't got that, how I'm struggling. And of course what you do is you manifest it because you talk about it.
Yeah, and that comes from not healing the underbelly. So as long as you're unhealed, you're always going to keep going back to that being your experience, rather than manifesting from a place of faith. You're manifesting from past wounds because you're holding on to that energy and that memory.
Yeah, it's I've always found it a very interesting subject, you know, and I've read books from the past as well as having my own sort of experiences. But you've got Swedenborg, who was having experiences in I think the 1600s, and he was Swedish, and there was astral projection and remote viewing of a fire at that time that was, in our terms, probably an hour away, but, you know, maybe a week's riding by horse in his time. And him giving descriptions of the fire and that kind of thing. But he also wrote, he's written many books, but he's also wrote about heaven and hell in the language of the time. It's been updated a little bit, but it's I find that kind of fascinating, because there's a lot more of that edge around than perhaps most people understand. You know, they come into this subject thinking it's all love and light, which is we have to be wary, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news to all the new agers and all that, because at the end there really is love and light, but you really can't get there until you've passed through many other gates and cleared out many other, you know, issues that stand in the way from you getting to that love and light. You really, you know, it's not as easy as a lot of people are making it sound.
Yeah, you know, you've got the dare I say it, the happy clappy brigade, and it's like, hold on, you know, you've got to live in the reality. You know, lovely neighbourhood, you could get attacked. You know, you have to be open to it. You were also mentioning in your bio about past lives. So are there any specific lives that you remember, or specific experiences in those lives?
Well, I've had you know, some memories here and there of different types of lives, different experiences. You know, once in the Renaissance days, once I was a little skinny cowboy guy during the days of Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
What's that?
In the West, yeah.
In the West. Recently, I've been getting a lot of memory of a past life where I was kind of an overweight Chinese guy that was. This is so funny, but I've been tapping into that memory quite a lot, that you know, he was well educated by his parents, and they made a lot of sacrifices to give him an education, which was really important to them and to him, and that for some reason that memory is getting really surfacing for me right now as I'm starting to work on my books. So I think that there's a lot to be said about the work that we do in our lives, in our current lives as well, because we've been working towards it in other lifetimes as well, right? So I'm being kind of oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm being kind of shown that, these books that I'm being inspired to write at this time are not just the work of this lifetime and my limited knowledge in this particular lifetime's experience, but rather the work of all of my lifetimes past, and particularly his or that lifetime. There was there's something there, I guess, that's going to unfold as I work on the book. So we'll see. I'm kind of in the process of those two, and I'm really trying to push through at least one of them this year. So kind of learning the ins and outs of it.
I think when you write, but my first book was written by automatic writing, so in that sense, I had very little involvement. I just have, as I say to my publisher, I just happened to be holding the pen, which she's not entirely happy with. It's your work. Well, no, not really.
Right.
But it is a voyage of discovery, because we learn a lot about ourselves. And as you say, if there's a process there, whereas this incarnation in China comes through, there are no coincidences. So I do think that there will be relevant things that will come up that will certainly be reflected in the book and may also guide the book. I find those things fascinating because it suddenly, it can take a turn or a direction which you never thought of or didn't really want to go, and then all the information comes through.
Totally. I was always reading and writing as a little kid, and I was always writing in journals and writing in school, and having my teachers just do backflips over my writing for some reason, and I didn't understand what was so great about it. I was just a little kid and I didn't care that much. I was just doing whatever. And even into high school and college, to where all of my writing teachers were pushing me into journalism, which is why I ended up getting a journalism degree. But for some reason, I think my ego I was afraid and I didn't pursue it, and then I ended up kind of like feeling bad in my life until I was shown that I need to come back and do this. This is what I came here to do. So I'm kind of at that place, and it's a crossroads, and it's not easy. It's part of my ascension and integrating my soul back to my soul, right? Yeah, and so it's kind of a part of the journey that has been pretty challenging for me, except that I know that I was born to write. And I go back and look at even journals from when I was 7 years old, and the words coming out of my mouth as a 7-year-old in my book, obviously it was coming from somewhere other than this world. 7-year-olds don't even know those words, So it's interesting.
Yeah. And perhaps, you can come back and or do a book of those writings as a 7-year-old, because again, I think it would be fascinating, certainly with pictures here and there of your handwriting at that point. Although I say your handwriting, if you're channeling in that way, sometimes it just isn't your writing, is it?
Oh yeah, I have. It's funny you brought that up, because I have that happen in college when I would be writing notes, and I would go back to read them, and there would be 7 different handwriting styles there.
Yeah,
it's like, wait a minute, what?
yeah. It's. I think those experiences are great because they intrude in a very nice way. But I think it also it gives us comfort, doesn't it? That spirit are just showing themselves in different ways. Yeah,
absolutely. I've gotten pretty consciously friendly with most of these spirits now, but
I think it's because we tend, if I say we collect guides, that's possibly a bit of a misnomer, really. But we do have, when you're working as a medium, depending on the type of work you do have a selection of guides that sometimes are extremely specialist, and others just kind of come in and lend a hand, don't they?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
find that myself. Do you do transfiguration or anything on on that side of physical mediumship?
I don't know what transfiguration is. Maybe I do it
Okay.
and I don't know what it means.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's always possible. Transfiguration is when spirit come very close. They use ectoplasm.
Yeah.
So what they do is that they put a small mask over your face, and then your face changes, so people can see other spirit beings on your face, and sometimes it's quite dramatic because I've seen good transfiguration where the ladies actually had a fairly small head and quite pale skin, and then over that I've seen a very large man's head with a beard and that, and you know, trying to talk or sometimes talking. So
Interesting. Well, that's new for me.
yeah, it's a
No,
wonderful thing. You know, there aren't that many good mediums that do transfiguration.
Interesting.
But yeah, when it's there, sometimes what you also get as well as a face transfiguring, you get hands and arms that appear alongside the medium, and they move, and that it's wonderful.
Well, now I'm going to be having to ask Spirit to show me that. I have never done that. Most of the people that I work with are online, so a lot of the work that I do is more just intuitive, so we don't see each other anyway.
Yeah.
But I do have where spirits come in, and sometimes they want to be heard, and I'm not even trying to channel them or whatever, but they do come in and they have a message, and they'll make sure that they get my attention so that I can relay the message.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So-
absolutely. Have you taken that subject slightly further? Have you ever seen physical mediumship, which is usually the old-fashioned seance in the dark, where spirit can make themselves known or physically appear? Although I prefer that kind of thing in the light, and that's becoming slightly more prominent. Is that something that you've ever experienced?
You mean like seeing spirits?
It was where spirit would use ectoplasm to form themselves and then walk around the room and talk. Sometimes they will touch you. Shake hands. They're very solid and warm. It's a wonderful thing.
I actually have had that experience. I didn't know to term it the way that you're terming it, but I've had those experiences quite a lot. And I think that, quite honestly, in my twin flame journey, that a lot of the work that we've done in the last decade, he and I, because we live in different states and we started to connect on a fifth dimensional perspective, so we're able to feel each other's light bodies and see each other's light bodies. Like in my room, I can see and feel him.
Yeah.
Like he's just sitting next to me, but he doesn't have his physical body, but his light body's there. And you're calling it exoplasm. I call it a light body.
Yeah.
I think that's the same thing.
I think there is a slight difference in that, but it's got a similar feel to it. Yeah. What do you feel about remote viewing? Because the government, as always, and all of them do this, Sorry, I think I've touched something. Hold on. Hopefully I'm back on air now. The government, they come across something which is lovely, and then they want to weaponize it, as in remote viewing. What are your feelings about remote viewing? Because I know that you do that.
What are my feelings about it? What do you mean, what are my feelings?
Is it something that you like and you do a lot and enjoy that? And what do you feel about the government, getting remote viewers to really to weaponize it? They want to find out secrets and that. Man's got a very devious mind, hasn't he? You get something good and we have to twist it.
Well, I think that my feeling on that, I can go down a deep rabbit hole with this one, but my feeling on that is that these gifts come really when you're aligned with the spirit, with source,
and with the spiritual laws. And when you're in alignment with the source and spiritual laws, you're not in alignment with what the government's agenda is.
Yeah.
And so you kind of can't be in alignment with both at the same time, really. And therefore, if you're doing remote viewing for the government, there's probably most likely going to be some mischievous spirits involved in that. Meaning,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Meaning that you might have a lot more play going on there than you're really asking for, and you're playing with the dark side, I think, when you start to engage in that. And I really, I don't know. I think there's going to be interference.
Yeah, I think with anything like that, it's the intention, isn't it? And if you've been trained that way because it's being weaponized or used that way, then it's the intention behind it. So I think there's always a bounce back, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah. Okay, we are just going to go into a break. Welcome back, and as usual, the first 3/4 of the show has just simply vanished, and we have Ellen Red on the show, and we've been talking about all kinds of things. So if you've missed it, go back to the archives. It's been very interesting, very entertaining. And we were talking just before the break about astral travel and astral connections and some of the physical mediumship things. And during the break, Ellen was talking about a partner in the astral body was making connection with her, and she asked for proof, and he kind of squeezed her leg. And we got round to talking about, didn't we, Ellen, of an experience that I had. And this was many, many years ago, and it was a woman that I knew was attracted to me. And I suddenly found myself out of my body and meeting her, and it was a very vivid experience. We did have sex, and I think it surprises some people to know that that can happen, and that if you're very inclined that way, there are places within spirit where you can work that out. So there are sexual things that can go on, and you were slightly surprised that happened, but for me, again, it was a wonderful thing. It was an experience, only ever happened once, but something that, if I say I enjoyed, I don't mean it in the physical aspect.
I wasn't surprised that it happened, because I've had it happen myself with my twin flame over a 10-year period many times. So I was surprised. I guess I'm surprised when I find others that have actually done it, but no, I wasn't surprised that it happened.
Yeah, and it was something that, for me, I think it was something that I had to experience. To just know that was possible, and I've just got images now of hordes of people going out thinking, that's good, it's cheap, you're not going to catch anything, let's go for it.
That's so funny.
I've just got that image there. We have a few minutes to go. Is there anything you'd like to sort of go over again or reiterate? About the books, maybe. Do you have any schedule when they might come out?
Well, I'm really going to try to get the first one's going to be the Twin Flame book, and just because I have large groups of people that are on that journey that are really looking for answers, so I'm working on that one first, hopefully by the end of the year. My cousin and I, if we're in lockdown for a month, we're going to have a little bit of a competitive thing where we're both going to try to write our book in a month if we're stuck in lockdown. But I don't know if that's going to happen, so I don't want to promise it. But I'm going to try, and I might pick your brain as far as the technicalities of publishing and how you went about that in yours too. Just because I think that's a writer's block issue, right? Figuring those details out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so that should be coming out hopefully in the next couple of months. And as far as anything else to talk about, I just kind of wouldn't mind to, end our conversation for the sake of the listeners to, try and remind everybody to keep yourself in a higher state of, being in your heart and your mind during the times that we're facing right now with, everything we're seeing on the news and all that, to just remember to shut it off sometimes and go out and just enjoy life and, try to pull yourself away from that fear energy and everything to, distance yourself from what you're seeing on the news. There's a lot of things that are going on that none of us really have all the answers, but there's a lot going on in the background, I think, too. And yeah. It's not going to hurt you or anybody else to just back away and go allow yourself to enjoy life anyway in the midst of it, and try not to get caught into, feeling afraid and all of that other stuff.
Yeah, I think isolation actually wouldn't be a bad thing, because certainly if you've got a full house, you've got kids and everything, of course they're going to go on their phones and that kind of thing. But I do think hopefully that it will get to a point where the kids will get fed up and actually families will start talking. It's it's an opportunity, I think, to rediscover.
Right.
So I think
it's the best way to tune into spirit, right?
Yeah, hopefully, if because we have so many distractions, don't they? What with phones and computers and that, and in an age of technology where communication is supposedly so much easier, we communicate even less. It's an odd thing, isn't it?
It really is. And I don't know if this is accurate or not either, but I'm even kind of hearing some news, at least in the United States, that they may even shut down or limit some of our internet access. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but it's kind of buzzing in the air right now. And so if that does, I would just say for anybody that's affected by that, to really use that time to get in touch with yourself and your spirit and everything, because in my experience, the closer I get to spirit, the more I'm led to the exact things that make me happy and that bring me joy and heal me and correct the problems in my life. So use it for the good and make the best out of it, Yeah,
and I think, if we take that opportunity and we're quiet and thinking about what we want to do, again, not from a negative point of view, but just understanding that sometimes life can turn on a dime, and what are we going to do when that happens? Because I think it's a great opportunity for people to sit down and think about their lives and, how we interact with others.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been really, really interesting talking to you. It's been a privilege. Yeah. And, and lovely talking to you. So people can contact you on Facebook and presumably organise readings and have some tuition and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any last thing you want to say before the program ends?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just for those that are listening, of course, I'm sure that a lot of them are working with you or with other people or whatever. But one of the things that I do specialize in my work anyway is to assist people through ascension and being able to travel the dimensions, as well as the alchemical twin flame journey. So anybody that resonates with, that's definitely my specialty. I'm coming into, my about 10 years now on that journey. So, and I've gone through all of the levels and layers of integrating my alchemical marriage with my partner and all that. So anybody that's resonating with, that's definitely one of my specialties. So if there's people out there that are kind of on that journey and looking for help, then definitely reach out to me. And otherwise, I just look forward to hearing some of your next shows, and you always seem to have some pretty great guests.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, I am blessed. So if you're interested, it's Ellen Red, ELLEN, Red, REDD, and we shall see you next week.